Sarah Moras versus Vanessa Melo. We got minus 240 on the Canadian Sarah Moras and plus 200 on the Brazilian Vanessa Melo. Let's start off with Sarah Cheesecake Moras, who's coming off a loss to Sijara Eubanks. She's actually 1-4 in her last 5 fights. The only victory coming to Liana Jojua in that amount of time. I believe that was back at UFC 242, where she was able to finish Liana Jojua late. Just a grappling onslaught, and then a lot of perseverance and durability. Now, she isn't the most comfortable on her feet, and she has some solid jiu-jitsu to back her game up, but in terms of level of experience, it blows Vanessa Melo out of the water. Sarah Moras was on The Ultimate Fighter. She's fought a lot of tough competition, including Macy Chiasson and Lucy Pudilova, but she's been around the game for a while now, and for her to be this big of a favorite, I think it's more so just the experience level, not to mention also Vanessa Melo's not the greatest either too. This is almost a case of who's worse, and I feel like Sarah Moras is just a little bit ahead of Vanessa Melo in terms of talent, skill, and obviously experience. We're talking about a 6-6 opponent going up against a 10-8 opponent. That's the type of fight that we're getting on our hands here. It's more than likely that whoever loses here is probably going to get cut from the UFC, even though this is going to be the second loss in a row for Sarah Moras. She's just had so many opportunities in the UFC that I just don't see the UFC giving her another chance if she does end up losing here. Vanessa Melo, on the other hand, she's already had 3 losses in a row. She hasn't even gotten her hand raised in the UFC. So the fact that she's even still around after 3 losses in a row in the UFC is a little bit mystifying to me. So I'm absolutely certain if she loses this fight, she's more than likely going to get cut as well too. But in terms of skills and talents, as we're talking about, again, Sarah Moras has that moving forward type of style, doesn't mind eating some shots to try to get hers going. But I think where she'll have the advantage is if this fight does hit the ground, and I do think that's where it's going to end up going. Now, even though Tracy Cortez was 2 of 9 on takedowns against Vanessa Melo, I still believe that a little bit of the size had an issue in that fight. Tracy Cortez normally fights at the weight class below. However, she did take that fight against Vanessa Melo just to get a fight in to begin with for that year, because she had just gotten signed off the Contender Series that year, and then she wanted a quick turnaround, and the only opponent that she could get was Vanessa Melo at a weight class above, so she did end up taking that. I think that's Sarah Moras. In terms of size, we got 5'7" from Sarah Moras, 5'5" from Vanessa Melo, 67-inch reach from Sarah Moras, 65-inch reach from Melo. So I think we could see a little bit of outpowering from Moras in terms of being able to just muscle her to the ground, push her up against the cage, and just wear on her. And I think that's where Melo's eventually going to break. Now, I like the last opponent that Vanessa Melo fought was Carol Hosa, who shows great boxing, great combinations, and great footwork, and she just battered up Vanessa Melo for the entirety of those 15 minutes. I'm not saying that we're going to see the same type of performance from Sarah Moras here, but I feel like the linear motion of Vanessa Melo with her striking, very just plodding forward, doesn't really cut angles, just throws power in her shots and throws combinations, which is decent, but doesn't show much else other than that. So unless we see a completely revamped game plan from Vanessa Melo, I don't really see her winning this fight. With that said, at minus 240, I am not touching Sarah Moras at all. You need to give me pick'em odds for me to even pick a side here in terms of actually betting it. Obviously, the Sarah Moras side is the side that I'm leaning on, and that's where I think she ends up winning. So I think that she just wears on Melo, lands some good shots on the feet, drags the fight to the ground, or even in the clinch, just kind of overpowers her. She's got a little bit of a caboose on her too, probably one of the bigger cabooses that we've seen in the UFC. But she uses it well. She has a good base. She's kind of strong too, but talent level is just not where you want to be. Especially when you're in the UFC, these are probably more of the bottom of the barrel in the division. So I'll go with Sarah Moras. I think she wins this fight. Again, pushes up Vanessa Melo against the cage, accrues some control time, lands some good shots on the feet. But ultimately, I think it's just Vanessa Melo not being to that level. How she even got to the UFC is beyond me, but neither of them really are at that level where you're like, okay, they're a top 15 type of woman. I'm not that, or fighter, I should say. I'm not going to say that, but I will go with Sarah Moras to win this fight via decision.